Alright folks, hello. We're going to add some stretchy to our character. So that when we pull down the leg, past that point, it'll stretch out. So because currently it breaks, our toe bend kind of goes down there, causing that IK handle, causing the toe bend to go down. That's fine, but it's not accurate, right? That's not how your phone moves. So we're just going to introduce some stretchy here to fix that up. Cool, so what I want to do first is I'll hide my geometry. And I hit Alt-2 to do that here in the Show menu. And I'm going to go up here to Create, Measure Tools, Distance Tool. And holding V on the keyboard, I can snap that to my two joints and hit Enter to finalize that. And you can see over here in your outline, it creates a locator, 1, 2, and a distance dimension tool. But really, it kind of looks like it's just measuring the other side, but it's just really based off of your camera angle. So just rotating around, you can see that distance tool is always going to be off to the left of those two locators. So let's go ahead and name these. That way we will not forget. I'll say L underscore leg underscore distance dimension, and then same thing for the locators, L underscore. The one I currently have selected is the ankle. So ankle underscore locator, and then L underscore hip underscore locator. Fantastic. So the unfortunate part with these locators is they're currently not constrained to either the hip or the ankle. So we're going to constrain those up. I will select the joint here, because remember, constraints, the way they work is the last thing we select is what we're making the constraint on. So I'll select that hip joint and then that hip locator. Go up here to constrain, and a point constraint is totally fine for this. I'm just going to open up the option box and make sure maintain offset is on. I always like to do an edit reset just to make sure, and then say maintain offset and say apply. So now when I select that locator, you can see we have blue on the translate XYZ. It is going to be constrained to wherever that hip moves. Just to show you here, move it, and that locator moves with it. Now, we're not going to constrain this locator to the actual ankle. Instead, I want to constrain this to the actual foot control. That way, wherever this goes, that locator moves with it, and it's offset to where the ankle should be as well. So I'm going to select the control, then that locator, constrain, and instead of doing a point, we'll do a parent constraint. That way, when it rotates, it'll rotate with that control as well. And I'll say apply. Now whenever I rotate, that locator rotates with it, but also it kind of just moves with it as well. You can still see it's still broken, right? It's still not fixed. We've got a lot more to go here, but we do have this really nice distance that's telling us the distance between point A and point B between these two locators, which is, we're going to use some math in order for us to figure out how to get this stretchy going. Before I go too far forward, I'm going to select this. I'm going to go to my side view and do this. So I'm going to select the foot controller, go to my side view, and pull it down until it gets all, and I can be real precise about this. I'm going to go up here to translate Y and hold control and, I said translate Y. I said translate. Curse you, Maya. What's up? What are you doing? Y selected. But I can do it this way as well. It's only going to do it in points, though. That's not as accurate, so that's fine. I'll just be real gentle as I pull this cursor down until I get to the straight point with the leg, right? And going beyond that doesn't really do us much good, but I just want to get exactly to where that leg straightens out. And the reason is I can go to that distance and note down this number here on this distance node, which can also be found over in the attribute editor under distance. So 6.326. I'm going to just open up a notepad window and note that number down. Feel free to just write it down on a piece of paper. That also works. And then I can go back to this control and go back to the channel box and zero it out. Cool. So the reason that number is really handy is here. You'll notice here in a second when we go to connect all of this together. Currently, I'm going to go to Windows, Node Editor, and I'm going to clear out my Node Editor. If you don't remember how to use the Node Editor, if you don't know, up here we have quite a few buttons. The one that looks like a square with a bunch of diamonds on it is going to clear this graph. So nothing is here. It doesn't delete what's there. it just hides it and removes it from our view. So we can be really particular about what we load in here. So I'm going to go ahead and load this distance dimension into this. So the way I do that is I can either select it in the outliner or in the 3D viewport and click this button right here. It says input and output connections. And now I can really focus in on here. We really don't need this one. I'm not going to delete it or anything. I'm just going to move it down here because really what I'm looking for is this left leg distance dimension shape. And here is where that distance node lives. So if you didn't know, in the node editor, we can hit 1 on our keyboard to hide all of the information of a selected node, or 3 to reveal all of the information in the selected node. So with that revealed, I can now connect this distance up to outputs. And I don't want to just directly connect this to the scale of my leg. I want to have some math going on. I know a lot of us are cringing at the idea of math, but it's not too bad. It really isn't. So first off, I want to create a node that's going to allow us to do some math. I can do this one of several ways. I can say right click and hold in the node editor, go up here to create node, and it gives us, you know, our old materials, our create nodes. That's kind of what materials are, just nodes, just connecting everything together. But I can go over here to utilities, and there are a lot of math functions, color functions, a lot of great stuff in here. But we're really only looking for one, and it's called the multiply divide node. If I search here, I can find that. If I click that, it gets added to my current node editor window. Alternatively, I'm going to delete that. Alternatively, I can hit tab, and it's just going to immediately allow me to search. So if I know the name of what I'm looking for, I could just hit tab and start typing, and there it is, the multiply divide node. I'm going to go ahead and rename this, so L leg underscore multiply divide. And sometimes I like to, instead, because that's a really long name, right? Sometimes I like to just put mult div. That way I know that that's multiply and divide. Not necessary, just whatever you feel comfortable with. Fantastic. So in our channel box, we have all of these inputs for this multiply divide node. We have inputs, and then we also have those equal outputs. Over here, it's hard to, you can't see them in the channel box, but we can see them here in the node editor. You can also see the inputs better as well. Input 1, XYZ, input 2, XYZ. I find in the channel box, it's really hard to decipher what this means, so I like to go to the attribute editor. And this is really going to help us figure out how to utilize this node. So essentially, we are inputting the information from our distance node here, right? This node that's defining the distance between those two. And we're inputting it into this multiply divide node. So we're going to connect this distance into input 1x. And the reason, you notice here, I want to undo that actually and show you. Notice here, oops, in this attribute editor, as soon as I click and drag from the word distance and hover over input 1x, it changes this number from this black background to a yellow background, black text, and a value of what that distance is. The reason I want to point that out is because this is now connected. It's just like the connection editor. If I had loaded up the connection editor and I said, hey, load this to the left side, load this to the right side, let's connect distance to the input 1x. It's just that same type of connection of dragging and connecting them visually with these cables. Fantastic. So what this node does is it literally, whatever operation that is here, for input 1x, it'll multiply input, currently it'll multiply 1x by input 2x. Think of these as columns, so x, y, z. So we're not going to worry about y and z, but we will worry about x. So x will be multiplied by input 2. The thing is, we don't want to multiply input 1 by input 2, and we don't want to leave that at 1. We actually want to change this operation to divide, and in input 2, we are going to insert that number that we noted down earlier. So now what Maya's doing with this multiply divide node is inside this node, it is dividing 6.303 by 6.326. Why is that important? Because now we can create a condition node. So we're going to add one more node. So we've already got the multiply divide node. I'm going to hit tab and search for condition. Not color condition or float, just regular old condition. And here we have quite a few options that we can connect things to. But essentially this multiply divide node, whatever we input it, whatever's being input here, it can give us an output. So if you see over here on the right side, that's how these nodes work. Left is inputs, right are outputs. And I can open up the output and I can see X, Y, Z. I don't really care what's happening in X, or I'm sorry, or Y, what's happening in Y or Z. I do care what's happening in X, because that's where we are making this function. So what I want to do is from output X, we're going to connect it up to a new condition node, and always want to name leg condition. That's fine. So just want to name stuff because we're going to have to do this multiple times throughout our project for both legs and both arms. Cool. So with this condition node, what we're going to do is this output X, like I was just saying, is going to be connected to, over here at our distance nodes, a couple of things, not just one or two things. So we're going to put output X to first term, and output X is also going to be connected to color if true. So I have color if false open, but I want color if true. Output X, color if true. So yeah, my attribute editor wasn't loading anything, so I had to change back and forth. You may also have to do that because here is where more math comes in. So you can see color if true, this is the output and first term. This is the output of this division node. So it's dividing 6.303 by 6.326, and it's putting out 0.99.996. So what we're going to do is change these up. Second term needs to be set to 1. And the operation isn't going to be equal. It's going to be greater than. And what's going to happen is this condition node is going to look at the first term and the second term. And it's only going to allow any information to pass from this condition node, from our multiply division node, if it's greater than the original input. So for this condition node, the second term is set to 1, so nothing will happen unless this color if true is larger than 1. Currently it's 0.996. So you can start to see this is where stretchy starts to come into play. So once I go beyond 0.996, that's when this condition node will actually start putting out the information from this multiply division. If it's less than, it's only going to go with the second term, color if false, right? So that's only if it's true. If it's false, it'll just stay of a scale of 1, which is what our current scale is on those two joints. Hope that's making sense. It should make sense with this last step. And that's to load in the hip and the knee. So I want to select the hip joint. I'm not going to say input and output connections because that'll break everything. It'll get rid of all of this nice layout that I have here. But instead, I'm going to hit Add Selected Nodes to Graph. And that's this button right here. It looks like a plus. Now we have our hip. And I can hit 3 to expand that out. I'll open up Scale as well. So if we look at this, our objects, if we think back to our orientation of our joints, X is shooting down the joint axis. So that's really what's going to cause our stretch. So it's going to be scale X. And if we think of color if true, I know it says RGB and we were originally doing XYZ, but it's going to be in that same order. RGB, XYZ, out color R is going to be output X. So the whole math and whole kind of idea that's happening with this condition node greater than is only going to be output in color R or output X, right? Because that's the only thing we're doing. Again, think of these as columns, X, Y, Z. Y and Z we're not doing anything with, but we are doing stuff with X. So out color R is going to go to scale X. Now I need to do that exact same thing with my knee. So I'm going to select this hip and just hit 1 on the keyboard to make that a little smaller, make my life a little easier. Select my knee, click this button right here, add selected to graph. I'm going to pull this down, open it up. I'm going to open up scale as well. Going back to my leg condition up here, out color R, into scale X. So now when I select that foot joint and I pull down, we're no longer going beyond its limitations. The scale of our leg joints for the hip and the knee are now stretching and causing our model to stretch with it. Now, when we go back and up, and that distance decreases, so you see 3.756189, that distance decreases, notice how our leg isn't squashing. And the reason is because of this condition node. If this is, okay, currently it's less than 1, so it's false, so it's going to resort to this number right here. If this was set to less than, it would kind of do inverse and we would get a little bit of squash going on, but we really don't want that. We just want some stretchy on these legs. And because that's going beyond that, let's go back and take a look at what that condition is. So now the first term is 1.89. So now it's going to go off the color if true. So now it's going to scale each of those by 1.89. Okay, cool, but where did this number come from? It came from our multiply divide node. So because the distance, and I can even select that distance node, let's see if I can click it there. Because the distance is now 11.94, almost 12, is greater than, is greater than 6.326 is where we stretch the leg out to its max where it straightened that leg out, right? It's now dividing those, giving us a number that is 1.889, and it is greater than 1. So now the output of this condition is giving that 1.889 as a scale value to our hip and our knee. So the scale is no longer just 1, but they are increasing by that number where we're doing some math. Now we're going to do it for the left side, it's going to be, or right side rather, it's going to be the exact same process. You're just going to do it for the right side. And to help you get started on that, you don't have to kind of clear out this tab. You can leave this tab open, especially if you want to reference it. You can click this plus button just like you would in any browser. You'll open up a new tab. That's where I can start loading everything in. Just kind of go back through this video or make notes. Even myself, I have notes for this video. Feel free to screenshot that if you would like, but these are just my notes for it. But if you just want to reference this, that's the best way to go rather than just doing what I'm doing. Oftentimes with these videos, I often think people get in their head, oh, monkey see, monkey do. I know how to do this now. And then you step away, it's like, oh, I don't know how to do this. Take notes, implement this to your rigs, and really pay attention to what's happening here behind the scenes. That's why I went through a lengthy explanation of what's happening here. I could have just went step by step and just this video would have been done in like 2 or 3 minutes, but I really wanted to explain in depth what's happening and why it's happening the way it is. Cool. That is stretchy for the legs. We're going to do stretchy for the arms. Fantastic.